Our next question is, what do we look for in a personal statement? And more specifically, if there's a recommended reading list or any particular titles that one should mention in a personal statement, and how to kind of answer the question, why this degree and why UCL, without specifically mentioning the universities, as we know students are applying to several through UCAS. Martin, did you want to start on that?
Well, I think one of the key kind of problems, I guess, if I was in the position of having to write a personal statement when applying for an anthropology degree, is that often you're not entirely sure what anthropology is. You find it interesting, you want to discover more, but because you haven't done it as part of your A levels, if you're British, or as part of your whatever qualification you have from wherever you're applying, you feel a bit kind of insecure about it, because you we're going to be reading this statement, want to find out that I know my stuff already, that I'm already deeply embedded in anthropology. None of that is the case, really. Don't stress about that at all. We don't expect you to know anthropology before you've even studied it. We understand the position from which you're applying. What we're looking for is interest in it, a kind of trajectory of how you connect your own personal experiences from where you're at in the particular life stage that you're in kind of that stage of just thinking about going to university, with the kinds of things that you see when looking, for example, at our website, where we describe the kinds of things that our degree covers, right? So drawing that connection in your personal statement is something that is of great interest to us. We really want to find out, okay, what is the motivation of this person to come and study with us, right? And really, we want to make sure that the motivation matches the way that the profile of our degree, right? So if in your personal statement you were to say, well, I've always been completely fascinated with the cellular structure of human beings, and I'm absolutely kind of taken by biology as a field, and I see that you include biological anthropology, and therefore I've decided to apply to you, there'd be a question mark, because one would wonder, perhaps it's better for you to actually study biology rather than place your interest within this much broader field of anthropology, the way that we teach it at UCL, right? So there's that kind of ensuring that there's a match between your interests and the things that we're teaching, but it's not a test of how much you already know about anthropology, right? Now, if you happen to have read a book that is relevant to anthropology in the way that you think about it, and you want to talk about that in your personal statement, that's a great idea. That gives us a sense of how live your mind is, of how interested you are in different aspects of things that we might find relevant. So all that's great, but really my message is, it's not a test.
Thank you, Martin. Laura?
Yeah, just adding on to that, I think it's really important to remember that it is a personal statement, and not to get lost in trying to, write an essay about what anthropology is or what you think it is. It's really a work of introspection, and I think that's what we want to see as well, because anthropology is eventually going to be a lot of introspection, and a lot of thinking about what it is to be human, what you are interested in, and how you can make a change. So in your personal statement, I would say to really focus on both what Martin said, what your previous experience with it was, if you do have some experience with it, reading a book or anything else, but really to show us how you went from not necessarily knowing about anthropology to really wanting to study it. And so the steps that you took, and if you read something on the website, if you read an article by one of the professors or anything else, really, it's really to show that you understand that it is introspection and it is thinking about you. So really, it's hard to write about yourself, especially when you get to A levels and you're always writing about a bunch of things, but never about yourself, really. So just try to explain it to one of your friends, explain why you want to study anthropology, and write that down. But remember that it's really about you as a person. And so if this show that you watched empowered you to want to study abroad to UCL in London or anything else, that's something that you should mention. With regards to the question, specifically the question about how do you mention UCL without mentioning UCL, I think if you are interested in having a breadth of anthropology sections in your degree, you're most likely going to be applying to other anthropology departments that do have some type of breadth in their teaching experience. So you can mention things that are similar between those departments. I mean, every university understands that you are applying to four other universities, which might be different diplomas in a way. So it's really not a big deal if you are emphasizing your first and second choices. So in my case, it was LSE and UCL, right? And UCL was my first choice. So I think it made sense to emphasize what is specific in one line, what is specific about your first choice as well, because it is ultimately where you want to end up, right? So.
Thank you, Laura. Alex?
Yeah, I think also just building on something that Martin mentioned, and also Laura mentioned as well, the idea of the personal statement. It is personal. And Martin mentioned, it's important to kind of talk about where you're at. And I think it's also important to talk about who you are. So UCL is a global university, but it is also a university based in London. And in London, the ethnic makeup of the city is 40% BAME. And as an anthropology department, we are deeply committed to widening the kinds of people that apply to do anthropology at UCL. And we are of a mind that people who study at UCL should reflect what the city looks like more widely. And so, again, touching on something that Heidi mentioned earlier, anthropology does come from a colonial kind of background, as we are sort of discovering more and more these days, as many things in the UK society do, right? Whether, it's something which is part of an ongoing discussion, whether you're at UCL Anthropology or you're visiting a property at the National Trust, these kinds of questions are present, and they are being debated and discussed, including within UCL Anthropology. And so what I would say to candidates who are thinking about applying for UCL Anthropology is that we are, like I mentioned, really committed to trying to widen the participation and the kinds of students that apply to our discipline, to move towards reflecting London more broadly. That's really important to what we do. And I invite people who want to think about those questions, think about who they are in relation to the institution within the UK, to come and be part of that conversation at UCL Anthropology, because that is a discussion that we are having right now, and it is a discussion that we will continue to have. And I think that it's really important that people who want to articulate those kinds of questions know that they will be welcome and be able to do so in a department like ours. So yeah, I think that this is a very, it's a strong commitment from our part. And the idea of who you are and the personal, that is something that if you feel comfortable writing about that in your personal statement, and of course we understand that people may not feel comfortable, it's for each person to come to that kind of decision when is correct for them. But if that is something that you do feel comfortable writing about, then it's something that I think we would be really, really interested to listen to.
Thank you, Alex. Laura?
Even if you think that you can't express clearly why you want to study anthropology, or that you're very critical of your personal statement in that way because you're not sure what anthropology really is, or you feel like you don't understand it fully, and so you don't, you shouldn't apply because you don't understand it. Really, just try and have a look at the website, have a look at some of the articles that are published, or a really simple introductory book on anthropology as well, and please apply. Don't put a barrier before you even apply. You'll have enough barriers in your life that you don't need to add one yourself before you even apply to university.
Thank you, Laura. Martin?
Just what Laura just said reminded me that to just say that on our website we have a whole list of books that we think are looking at if you wanted to do so before you come. So kind of introductory level books that we think may be of interest to people who are thinking of applying. So do visit our website and just, find out a title that kind of grabs your attention and just try and, dip into that and get a sense of what it is that we do through doing that.
Great. Thank you, everyone.